Hello friends, this is part 2 of our Frith's Levels of Analysis visual rhetoric video. So now we're going to look at some examples. In the last video we talked a little bit about your analysis assignment, but mostly we talked about what visual rhetoric is, how it functions, and what Frith's Levels of Analysis are for. So let's look at an example. Now this is a Snickers ad, and the first level of Frith's analysis is the surface meaning. And the surface meaning just asks us to look at what is there, to catalog, to summarize. So if I am summarizing this image, if I'm looking at the surface meaning, I see, it's like a savanna or a grassland. There's a mountain in the back. There's some trees. There's a zebra. There's a lion. They're kicking up dust. There's like a little Snickers bar, some words, the Snickers logo. The whole image is a little bit washed out in terms of colors. There's some bright light. I assume that it's washed out to, again, give us this kind of grassland impression, maybe to emphasize that it's sort of dusty. We can see dust clouds. There's some fine print down here at the bottom, but from what I can tell, it's just copyright information. It's nothing really that important. And so really that's everything. Now, additionally, I can describe the situation in the image. So the situation in the image is that the zebra is chasing the lion. So this will become important in the next step. Let's move on to part 2 of Frith's 3 levels. This is the advertiser's intended meaning. Now, as part of the surface meaning, we can kind of suss out that there are some incongruities in this image, right? Zebras are not usually chasing lions. Usually, lions chase zebras. So in a nature documentary, we are often encouraged to take both part of the zebra and the lion, depending on what the scene is like and how it's been set up. But if we match this incongruity with the picture and text down at the bottom, the Snickers logo is "You're not you when you're hungry." So this would imply that one or more of these animals is not acting the way they normally would because they're hungry. So this tells me that maybe we're supposed to identify with the lion in this image. But overall, what this seems to be doing from the advertiser's intended meaning is that when you're hungry, you're not able to perform the usual role in society that you would. You're not able to complete the tasks that you normally would. And this is a particularly humorous example because, lions don't eat Snickers bars, but also lions don't usually get chased by zebras. So it's just kind of a funny take on the concept that when you are hungry, you are not you don't act like yourself. Both in the sense that you might get hangry, but also that maybe you can't do the things that you would normally do. So the brand strategy here, the advertiser's intended meaning, is that the Snickers bar will prevent you from being hungry and therefore will prevent you from being in a situation like the one that the lion is in. They are trying to get you to buy a Snickers so that you will not be hungry, so that you will be able to regain your typical societal role and activities. So then, the third level of Frith's kind of process is the cultural or ideological meaning. And this is kind of where these deeper level desires and attitudes and priorities come into play. So obviously the most basic one at play here is the concept that, we are humans who need to eat, and Snickers is maybe playing on that concept of satisfying literal hunger. But also by saying you're not you when you're hungry, it implies that you're not able to be the person in society that you are normally. So Snickers is promising through its branding and its products that basically if you eat a Snickers, that you will be able to be kind of yourself again. You'll be able to regain your cultural role. They're saying that when you're hungry, you stop being yourself. And there is a baseline cultural and ideological desire for us to maintain a unified sense of identity and a unified kind of social role. So this is the sense that, if when you're hungry, you are no longer occupying the normal role that you do, you need something in your life that is going to help you regain that status, that role, that way of being. And Snickers says, we can help you with that. So at that base level, we just see sort of a zebra chasing a lion. At that middle level, we see that, Snickers says that it will help us not be hungry anymore because we're not ourselves when we're hungry. But underlying all of that is a desire to have and maintain a certain role in society, and that Snickers can help us maintain that role or regain that role when we lose it through physical hunger. So there's a physical aspect, but there's also kind of a socio-cultural aspect at play here. So this is an advertisement for a product, but let's look at something that's not an advertisement per se. The first part of Frith's process is the surface meaning. So let's just talk about what we see on screen. In terms of color palette, there is a very cool color palette. It's blues, grays, blacks. There is a baby's face. It's very large. It occupies the entire image. It's just the face. It's not even the whole face because it's so big. The baby's eye is one of the only things with color in the image, but the eye is shown to be a television, a kind of old-fashioned television screen with an image of an eye on the screen itself. There's also text on this image just below the eye that says, "She's got your eyes." So that is the surface level meaning. That's what's on this image. There's a lot going on here, but the surface meaning is just the stuff. It's just a baby and some text and a really terrifying TV eyeball. So let's go to the next layer here. Let's talk about the advertiser's intended meaning. There's a little bit of a play on words in this. The phrase, "she's got your eyes," is something that we often say to parents of newborn babies, where we want to kind of create a social connection with the parent or an emotional connection by saying, "Isn't it nice that your baby looks like you?" And that's a way to do that. However, there is, again, an incongruity in this image because the baby's eye is a television screen. It's not an eye, it's a TV screen, and it's kind of scary. And between the scary TV eye and this kind of menacing blue-gray color palette, the emotion that we feel, the pathos part of this argument, is a sense of terror or fear or something being wrong. Frankly, it's a very visceral sense of wrongness because we are as humans, we tend to be very protective of our eyes because they're so delicate. And a lot of body horror in media deals with, vision and the eyes. So viscerally, in terms of a pathos response, an emotional response, this is kind of a scary picture. But it's also playing on another kind of pathos, which is parental responsibility for a child. If the child's eye is a television, one of the implications that we can make is that, there is a connection between children's eyes and TV. And between that and the phrase, "she's got your eyes," the implication being made here is kind of twofold. Or, potentially could be one of two things. Maybe it's saying that, your baby sees everything that you see because you're pretty much always with your baby. And so if you are watching things on TV that you shouldn't, then your baby will also absorb that. However, there's a little bit of context that I want to add to this, which is that we know cognitively and developmentally that television is really bad for babies. Babies shouldn't watch any television. It's just really, really bad for their visual and cognitive development. Like little kids shouldn't be watching TV at all until they're some years old. And so with that in mind, what this seems to be kind of telling me on that second level, the advertiser's intended meaning, is that if you are watching TV all the time, so is your baby. That if you are always sitting in front of the TV, because your baby, quote unquote, has your eyes, that your baby will see everything that you do. So if you're sitting on the couch all the time watching TV, your baby's going to be absorbing that. And that's where we get that kind of the baby's eye is a TV image. So then the third level here is that deeper cultural or ideological meaning. And this is again where that color palette comes back into play, because it is so kind of menacing. It reminds me of like a horror movie. On an ideological level, this seems to be playing into the concept of sort of fear, terror, danger, and also parental instinct, because as parents want to, protect their children. It is a parental instinct to do the things that will protect our babies and avoid the things that will hurt them. And this is also kind of where that kind of body horror comes back into play. Dang it, there we go. Because, there's obviously something deeply wrong with this child's eye. When you just see it, it catches your attention because it's not a regular eye. For a moment, you think something is terribly wrong before you realize that it's a television. So on a deep cultural ideological level, this feels like it's trying not just to sell me on the idea that my baby shouldn't watch TV, but also on the cultural and ideological value that if my baby does watch TV, that she's being hurt. She's being hurt by it. It's a scary, bad thing. And that as a parent, I should want to protect her from this scary, bad thing. So this deeper kind of value system is you should want to protect your baby. So again, the surface meaning is spooky baby, some words, TV eye. The advertiser's intended meaning is, hey, don't let your babies watch TV. And then the cultural or ideological meaning is, we should want to protect our children, and we should want to kind of protect them physically and mentally, cognitively, etc. Because if we don't, then they will be hurt. So let's look at one more. And this one is going to be a historical image. This is, because real life or historical images can also be evaluated according to Frith's levels of analysis, and obviously so can texts. So I'm leading us through a variety of images that kind of get us closer and closer to a text, a traditional text, so that it'll be easier to do this work with something that's not just a visual. So this is a picture from the early 20th century, and this is a really key picture for a couple of social movements. So let's first look at the surface meaning. This is a black and white photo, and it has kind of a long lens kind of angle on it, a long focus, short focus, I guess. I used to know more about photography, I'm sorry. But what we see is a little girl, and she's wearing some kind of dress. She's wearing a little apron over it. She's got boots on. Her hair is, it's just kind of tangly, like you might expect a little kid's hair to be. There are some windows over here. There's a woman in the background, a taller woman, and we can see kind of based on where the little girl is in relation to the machinery that the woman is much taller than she is, which implies that this is a young girl. Now the girl is standing in front of some machinery. We can see some thread bobbins up here, we can see that there are some moving parts here, and we see that she's adjusting something. So what this tells me is that she is working on some kind of fabric machine. Maybe it's a big weaving machine or a loom. Now, the kind of advertiser's intended meaning needs a little bit of context. This is a picture taken during the time when child labor laws were in question. So this is an image that was specifically taken in the service of creating child labor laws so that little kids wouldn't have to work in dangerous factories. So the advertiser's intended meaning here plays on a couple of things. First, this is a very serious little child. When we think about childhood, we tend to want to think, at least, about kids being happy. Also, judging by the size of this character in the background, she seems very small to be working. Third, we know that these machines are dangerous, and historically, we know that small children were often maimed by them. So then finally, the cultural or ideological message at play is not just, hey, kids shouldn't work in factories, but even deeper than that, it's the concept of justice, right? Of like, we should be protecting people from harm as much as possible, and kids can't protect themselves, so we have to do that work.